Thanks. Morning, everybody. The strategy's new. Not as new as I'd like it to be. The cloud stuff I did quite a lot of in Westminster, but what is new, I think, for me in Essex, is trying to do this in a county where over half of it's still countryside, has next to no broadband capability, and what broadband there is down at the sub-half meg level. So for us, in Essex County Council and the Essex County generally, there are large parts of the county where the desire to go to fully cloud-based on things like iPads is a few years away. So some of the realities. Great if you're in London, and I've had 3 great years in Westminster where connectivity wasn't an issue and we could do all sorts of wonderful things. And coming back down to earth, literally, with a bit of a thump, when I arrived into a county where there is nothing between Braintree and Saffron Walden in terms of any kind of connectivity. And stuff like hills and things get in the way. It gets quite interesting. But the thing I'm going to concentrate on for the next sort of 15 minutes is I think some of this stuff around cloud isn't as new as we think in terms of the business and the value propositions. But the other thing I do firmly believe is that cloud absolutely does not mean compromise to security. A little bit about Essex County. I've already touched on some of it. It's rather a large. We're one of the big 3 local authorities in England, us, Kent and Birmingham. And rather a lot of geography to look after, rather a lot of roads, rather a lot of people, rather a lot of businesses. Out of the 60,000 businesses we have, over 40,000 of them are SMEs of 5 to 15 employees. As you'd expect, Essex, with our reputation and history, entrepreneurialism is something that we like, and we also don't like to pay the tax man too much, too often. So, clearly reconciling those kind of things is interesting. The County Council itself, about £2 billion a year gross budget. We have 40,000 employees, most of them in schools. And we have a lot of public sector partners. It's a very complex public sector environment. And that's important, actually, from the cloud prospect as I go through this, because to me, one of the things that the cloud stuff is doing is enabling us to actually join up public service delivery in a way that before some of the cloud stuff that came through, was around, which just wasn't achievable. The backdrop for us in cloud, we've got a very clear sort of direction of travel as a county and as a council. We're moving to customer-centric, hence the self-serve drive. Efficiency and value for money, who in public sector isn't doing that right now. I think the economic situation fairly clearly dictates that. On the value for money piece, the savings of at least 300 million, we've actually managed to take 370 million out of our spend over the last 2 years and this year coming, which has been not without pain, but necessary. Around the commissioning piece, a lot of talk in the public sector about moving to commissioning. What does that really mean? And that means much more around provisioning services based on outcomes rather than directly delivering them yourselves. Yeah. And then my little patch at the bottom here, no big challenge really. Technology-enabled high-performance workforce against a diminishing budget. Always a joy to reconcile those two things. For me, key elements for ICT and the change things are really around these sort of key things. Core contracts, scaling in line with the workforce based on total cost of ownership. Total cost of ownership's been around, as we know, in the IT sector for quite a long time, but we've tended to play at it. For me, cloud is actually, it needs to get real, it needs to get serious. I have an employee, I need a single number that delivers fit-for-purpose IT for that employee per annum. And that, to me, is what TCO is about. Yeah? I don't want to have separate lines around bits of hardware, ports, and all of that fun stuff. It's got to be consolidated. And the real challenge with my colleagues in the supply side is also backing that off against contracts that allow me to take cost out as the workforce changes, or add cost in as we consolidate around shared services. And I can't wait a year for that to happen. My TCO model and my sliding scale in Essex is on quarters in year. So if we delete 50 posts, I expect to delete 50 people's worth of IT costs the following 3 months. Line of business systems moving into the cloud. It's interesting, in public sector, certainly the line of business systems are the ones that go into the cloud first, not core IT. And the reason for that is that they're easily packaged, and actually those companies I find are those that are hungriest to take advantage of what cloud can do on optimizing cost and actually replicating that service and reselling it on multiple times to the public sector. I find that a much harder conversation with the supply side around core IT, around the core desktop environment. I think the next generation network piece, and I'm in the middle of a procurement exercise at the moment for Essex, and it's not Essex County Council, it's for the whole of Essex, for the provision of ubiquitous voice, video and data network managed services to address the issue around lack of bandwidth in certain parts of the county, but also to really capture that often ignored bit of cloud, which is voice data convergence and voice video data convergence, where there's huge amounts of cost that can be taken out for the public sector. Also for us, ubiquitous networking and moving security up to the application level unlocks the ability for us to be able to work across a multi-agency basis, which is very, very important for us going forward. But related to that, of course, the other thing we can't do in the public sector, we cannot fail on security. We can't get it wrong and say sorry. We just can't get it wrong. So reconciling those two things can be a real challenge. But I think inevitably we are going to be operating with much smaller core teams, probably 3 to 4 years out, where we will move much more, I think, to a harder traded or delivery versus strategic function. But I think what absolutely is certain, and the public sector's learnt this the hard way, is we will retain a strong strategic core so that we can remain in control of our destinies around where technology and information governance together needs to take us. Big buts. You can only do this if the organisation's ready for it. I've already touched on some costs being people-oriented, and what I'm referring to there is technology is an enabler, can deliver some significant efficiencies, but the real efficiencies for us in the public sector are around workforce reduction. And actually unlocking that through self-serve is no mean feat. And there are some fixed costs in technology enablers that enable that to happen. So thinking in terms of silos on service for delivering efficiencies is just not a sustainable way forward. Commercially available shared services are absolutely essential, and I still think there's a lot to do in that marketplace. It's beginning, but there's a lot going on. And I'm really excited and interested in what's going on around the growth of social enterprises in the public sector to try and reconcile retaining workforces in localities and also unlocking the ability to scale up and do the shared service thing. And the bottom one here, suppliers need to be able to deliver robust and reliable services. One of my big challenges, and I was very, very sort of skeptical whenever I'm engaging with suppliers, is around, I hear the talk about delivery, do I see the evidence that backs up that they're actually capable of doing it? Scale for us is massive. Us compared to a district council are two opposite ends, of the spectrum. So cloud, why and what plans are needed? Getting a handle on the enterprise architecture across an organisation, I think, is really important. We learnt this lesson, Waltham Forest, I learnt this lesson ODPM, Westminster, and also in Essex. We cannot continue with enterprise architectures that are the organisation's perception of a core IT infrastructure. You must have the line of business systems in there. You cannot have little bits hanging off around the outside. And I think what cloud does is really bring that to the fore, because the ease with which lines of business can go off and unilaterally do something actually massively increases the risk around duplication and also around screwing up the data. Yeah. And so that's very important. And to me, the win I have in organisations is around an enterprise architecture that you can articulate to the business so they understand what it means. Yeah? And also that they can understand why it's important that we understand what master data is, what the line of business data is, and how we protect that data respectively. Understanding and quantifying legacy and mapping a route forward. There is a reality out there, as we all know, in cloud. Legacy is a real challenge. I have in Essex County Council currently 600 different line of business systems, excluding access databases. I have a plan to rationalise that to around 120. We deliver over 300 different services, so relatively that's not surprising. But that makes for a hugely complex environment. For us, understanding legacy and being sensible about it means that our cloud plan is 5 years long, because some of that stuff ain't going to change in a hurry. Some of it, actually, it's not worth spending the money changing on it. What we do on maintaining our archaeological records of digs really doesn't make a great opportunity for cloudifying that SQL database. Yeah? It's used by 14 people. It's not going to change. And we have a lot of similar examples of that. On the other hand, dealing with a large-scale legacy social care system that has over 2 million records in it, because we have to hold adoption data for 125 years, is obviously a strong contender to move to a cloud replicable managed service. And budgets, understanding the total IT spend across the organisation and baselining, I think this one is something that's gone around the houses in public, private, voluntary sector for many, many years and hasn't gone away. But what I do find is tying that with the enterprise architecture piece moves the debate and discussion to somewhere where you really want it to be, which is the total IT spend is X, enterprise architecture is Y, the opportunity to take cost out is Z, and the opportunity to optimize workforce is A. We can move into that kind of discussion. And certainly in Essex, when I arrived, the view was our total annual IT spend was around 28 million. We actually found out there was another 14 million a year being spent out in the business. So we've got a handle on that, enables us to move forward on a plan that's enabling us to take 7 million a year out of cost and dramatically improve the service. Relating to that, engaging with line of business from the outset and actually working with them on migration. Something we're very good at in the IT side is saying in the information governance side is we know best. Actually, we don't. Social workers know best. Have the conversation with them and agree the way in which we can actually move that stuff on together. Takes a bit longer, but well worth the investment. The other bit I've got down there is it will involve more than one organisation. In social care in Essex, we have voluntary sector bodies, we have districts involved, we have the county council involved, we have a health service involved. That happens today, has always happened. And involving those other organisations means that we can really start to transform the way in which that service is delivered. Yeah? And we cannot be isolationist around our particular sort of empires in public sector. I think geopolitical and legislative reality is something we cannot ignore. Would I put resident social care data in a country where I don't know what legal recourse we have should that information be extracted by somebody inappropriately? Of course I wouldn't. So I think the geopolitical situation around cloud is absolutely real. It's never going to go away and is something that I firmly believe that we need to know. I need to know where the data is at rest. I need to be assured that the country in which that data is at rest has the kind of legislation that's equivalent to the legislation we have to protect both organisational and individual data. Yeah? So it's not about keeping it in the UK, but it is about working with countries that are actually on the same sort of level with us. Okay? I think also, something we need to remember constantly in the public sector and certainly in local government, this isn't our data, it's our residents' data. We're just looking after it with their permission in most cases. And if you start from that position, it really makes you think in a very different way about how appropriately you can then manage that data set. Moving into the IS organisation, I don't mean IT, I do mean IS, I mean information governance as well as technology. Big challenge. We're asking people to fundamentally change the way they operate in a lot of these spaces. My networks team, it's like rabbits in headlights when I first came in, when I started saying that actually we're going to go to voice video data convergence, we're getting rid of all of the analogue phones, we're going to go IP, we're going to go fixed mobile convergence, and they're looking at me going, what? They'd never worked in this. They were still in the land of PBX. Yeah? We had the same with some of our line of business areas where, I was saying legacy solutions that don't interoperate with other solutions are bad solutions. We need to move on from that. we're talking about people that have spent 15 years in Oracle development or 15 years in SQL and its predecessors. It's a very uncomfortable message. So the challenge there is, are they ready and do they want to change? How do we work them through? We're using Sophia, the BCS framework, for helping the staff along, but the start point was your jobs are changing, they're changing radically, and they're changing radically over the next 18 months. So the strategy we've got for Essex County Council is fairly straightforward. It's a 12-page document in total. 4 pictures actually form the centre of it. This is the main one, the forward-looking one. End-user computing is just about upgrading and standardising our IT in the normal way that most organisations do. I took a deliberate choice not to go cloud on that, to actually upgrade to Microsoft 2010 and Windows 7 because of the reality of the geography that we work in and the reality of the environment we were in, which was an old, early 2003 platform. It's sensible to bring them on. In 2-3 years' time, that might change if I see a mature private cloud or secure cloud managed service. I haven't seen one yet in that space. Okay? Around the information governance bit, about a third of my time is spent on information governance, non-techie bits, which is very much around compliance, legislation, and what we do about our information assets. And we've embarked on a 3-year programme of information asset audits across the entire county. Why 3 years? We have so much data collected over such a long period of time, it will take us that long to get through. But it's important, very important, I think, for us as an organisation to understand what we've got and know what we've got in information asset terms before we make decisions around what we need to do with some of it. Collaboration, social networking, mentioned earlier, we are looking at social networking. We use some of those social networking stuff already. My comms colleagues are absolute nutters for Twitter and stuff. They love all that. And we've had some quite lively debates at a county level on the back of that as a result. And also in the social care environment, Facebook is being used on more than one occasion for social workers to stay in touch with hard-to-reach teenagers, because it's actually a medium they work in and it's something they understand. We were doing the same at Westminster very successfully. And it's, so those tools can be used and have very good practical uses. We allow staff to access it in their own time. And last year, I think it was about 8 weeks after I'd started, we had a lovely front page spread on one of the local papers about how much time is spent by employees on Facebook and YouTube, until we responded saying, actually, we use YouTube as one of our main trading media for the organisation. We actually are heavy users of YouTube on providing short burst training programs, 2-minute, 3-minute sessions on how to do things. Why do we do it on YouTube? Because actually there's nothing secret about it. It's there, it works, and everyone can access it. We have 3,000 staff that don't have exchange accounts that work for the county because they work part-time. So a lot of their activity, they access their services through the web. Our payroll service is Oracle On Demand, which means they're able to manage their online payroll themselves without having exchange accounts for the council. It works, it's fine. I'm not uncomfortable with that stuff. Skills and capacity bit I've already touched on, and it's not just about the IT professional, it's also about the employee. So we're looking to raise the standard of IT competence across the whole organisation. And on customer-centric services, absolutely moving to self-serve using cloud tools, the kind of things I've already mentioned on line of business systems. So our end game. Digitally enabled service delivery and around excellent public access to services. It's not just about all being online. It is, though, about using our estate in Essex as the public sector to reach our residents, as well as self-serve online, as well as voice services. We have over 1,000 public sector buildings in the county at the moment, and it's mad. Why do we need that many buildings? We can do it probably on 200 or 300. So there's a lot of work on consolidation going on. End-user computing I've already touched on, and partners around the converged network piece is absolutely critical to making that happen. Transparency, data stores available to all. We are, again, as part of the information asset audit, making conscious decisions on what information belongs on the web. So our default position is, why isn't it available publicly, rather than why should we? Very different mindset. Collaboration, collaborative applications, big efficiencies I've already touched on, and staff able to operate across organisations, again, key to that whole sort of network piece. But underpinning all of that, information security and data integrity, you've got to do this with your eyes open, understanding the consequences of where information needs to be and what you need to do to protect it at the application level rather than at the organisation level. And then for us, finally, it really is about public service delivery, not just about local government. Okay, thank you.